Hi guys, welcome back to the concluding part of this particular application, how to create the login and register page using the SQLite database in Android. And we'll be moving straight to the Java classes. Right there in the model subpackage, I have the user class, and I'll be starting from there. So let's get to have some fields: private, integer ID, string, name, email, password. So we're going to use a get and set method, just what we know in encapsulation: integer, get ID, return the ID, set ID, passing ID as parameter. We said this class ID is equals to the ID parameter passed. Just it. Let's use the public get name, it's gonna be string data type. Return name, public, set name, now take the string name, cast it to this class, set name to be name equals to the value passed name. This should be public string or void anyway. Let me get void, which turns to no value. Public string get email, return email, set name, get email. Now we're going to call public void set email. I'm going to give string email as parameter. Now call this email equals to email. It's fine. Last should be the password. So let's call public string get password. String password is password equals to password. That's fine. So you have that set. Now we're going to, this should be return, just return password. Don't even need a string. Now this should now set string, password. That's fine. We have that set. For the forfeits, we have ID, name, email, password. From here, let's validate the form. So we'll go straight to input validation. Let's get to validate the form. So I want you to follow along with what I'll be doing here. Create a private field, context. Call that context. Get that in. Now we're going to have a constructor, public, input validation, which will pass the context and objects. Now this context equals to context. Initializing this. Now we're going to get the method to check the input edit text field. So that's what we're doing now. Now we call the public boolean is input edit text field, as if that got filled. So we're going to call on the text input edit text, create an object, text input edit text. Now we call the text input layout over there, called text input layout. Now you have the string, which will be for the message. That's fine, and these are the parameters we'll be needing. So we get to go on with this method. Now we're going to check for the value, that's a string data type. If it's equals to, we call this value should be lowercase, and let's call text input edit text. We'll get the text, convert to string. Now we'll trim up. That's fine. Now the if statement, if the value is empty, some sort of validation if the text input is empty. So now we call the text input layout, set error based on the message. You hide the keyboard. From the text input edit text, you return false. Now else, call the text input layout, set error enabled to false. It's fine. So you still get to return true here. Return true. That's cool. Now we're going to have is input edit text, email, matches and also the hide key from method. So let's get to create those methods. Now we're going to have another boolean, public boolean is, this time is going to be is input edit text email. Now parameters here will be text, input edit text. I have that right there. You have text, input edit text, comma. You have the layout. And we have the message. So now, same thing, we get a value. Get a text, to string, trim, and we'll test if the value is empty or it's not an Android pattern. Android utilities patterns email address matcher. This out of the box from Android to actually validate email address value matches. And it's going to text input layout, set error, pass the message, you hide the keyboard, text input to text, that's fine. You return false. So else the text input layout, that's the same thing you do. You set error enabled, pass false, that's fine, and you get to return true. That's for the validation if the field of the email is empty. Now if the text matches, let's get to undo that as well. We have another method. Let me get to close up all these. So that's going to, now the next one will be public boolean is input edit text matches. So if the edit text matches, now the text input edit text parameters, text layout, we're going to have for two edit text rather. First edit text, and we have the second one, that's if they match. If you're trying to pass in something you've done before, that's just it. Let's copy that and paste that. This time will be two over there. The object will be 2, and we get to check for the layout as well and the message. Now it's going to be text input layout. That's text input layout. Now string message. So now we're still going to get a value, but this time it's going to be value of 2 different edit text. So value 1, let's give text, be the first edit text 1. Let's just specify this is 1. So give this 1. Now call get text on that. Get text to string, we trim up, same thing we do for the second value, value 2. This time it will be the second one. Get text to string, stream. Now we'll get to test if it's not value 1. That's context, we call a method, a content rather, equals value 2 is inbuilt out of the box. Now we're going to call the text input layout, set error, pass message as parameter, and you get to hide the keyboard. Keyboard from the text input edit 2, return false, else what you're gonna do, call the text input layout and you set error enabled false. That's fine. Now you got to still return true. Now let's get to have the hide keyboard from method. So now we'll be able to detect if there's an empty field or if the email is not well structured or if some text matches. So that's the sense of what we're doing. Now let's have the void hide keyboard from. It's a view. Bring in this. So we can call the input method manager. Let's give it IM input method manager. Call the input method manager. Get a context. Get system service. Call activity. Input method service. Now the objects called hide soft input from window. Soft input from window. Now the view is going to get a window token. A window manager. Call the layout params. Soft input always. Input state. Let me just type it. Input state always hidden. How's it over there? That's fine. So we have the validation set. So this actually check for if the edit text is empty, and if you have a wrong kind of email, and if you have some fields that are of the same, so that's the validation. We have the 3 layers of validation, and we have the hide keyboard from, which is actually going to hide the keyboard when it's displaying those errors. So from here I'll be going straight to the database helper. Let's get to create our SQL database and create the tables and get other things included. So now in the database helper class, you need to extend the SQLite Open SQLite, not database. It's going to be SQLite Open Helper. That's fine. Now we need to have our database version. Private static finder. Integer database version. It should be integer. Let's just give 1. Version 1. Now we're going to have the database name, private static finder string database name. Let's give it user manager.db. User manager.db. And let's get to have the users, the table name for the users. We have private static finder string table underscore user. That's going to be equals to a string value of user. That's fine. So now let's have our columns for the table. We're gonna have a private static finder string column user ID. Nice. Actually going to be user underscore ID. So let me get to copy this because we're going to have 3 other features. So the next one will be for column username. This one should be user underscore name. The next one will be for email. User email. Should be user underscore email. And the last should be for password. 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 Now we're going to have the query, the SQL query. The first query will be to create a table. Private string create user table. So how to create table in SQLite. How about we call create table, we concatenate with the table name, that's table user, and we concatenate the parentheses. So we first of all have that round, not there, just something of this nature, and we get to call the fields. The first field will be column user ID, concatenate with. Now we call the integer, it should be an integer. Now it should be a primary key, and it should also be auto increment. So if you're familiar with SQL, you should know all this. Auto increment, as default, it should increase on the add of another data. That's what that means. Now we're going to concatenate this with the column username. This is a text data type. We're going to concatenate with the column user email, also a text data type. It should be column password. Also text. Now we end that. Have to pass in the closing parenthesis to create that table. So call the create user table. So in any create, we must have a corresponding drop. So private string drop users or user table. So that should be equals to drop user table. Now have a drop table if exists. With the table name, table user. That's fine. We have the set. Now let's have our database helper constructor. Public, so our fields, database helper, the context, now we call the super context, database name, null, database version, creates, try to execute the query, so we need to override this. To override, we call the onCreate method public void onCreate. We pass the SQLite database. That's the parameter. I give an object of DB. Now we call the execute SQL on the create user table. So to get that SQL executed, and we're going to have the on upgrade, and we get to we're going to have on upgrade out of override. Now it's going to be public void on upgrade, call the SQLite database db integer for the old version of the db and for the new version. I'll still call the db to execute, drop user table, and recreate. So on create to recreate that, pass the db as parameter. That's fine. Now we just need the add user method, and that's just the major method we need because we're going to add a user. And also we might need a check user method. So that's the two methods we're going to be adding inside this particular helper. So let's have the add user method to assist us in adding users to the DB. So we're going to have that set. We need some space. If I should collapse this, everything we have to. Let me get the import just to have some space for me to issue out the codes. Now I'm going to have the public void add user method user parameter. So it's actually going to import the user from the model. I call on the SQLite database. I'm going to instantiate this. These get writable database. Pretty cool. Now call the content values. Give it an object values. Instantiate with the new content values. Now these objects we have to put in first of all the column user name, call the user get name. Okay, see how it's been done. Now we're gonna put in for the email user get email. Same thing goes for the password values. Protein column password user get password. That's just how to add values to them. Now you call the DB to insert into the table user null and the values. Pretty simple. And you close the DB. That's just how to issue out the add user. So I'll collapse this to give me space. Now I'm going to create another method, and that method will actually check for user. Now let's check for user, which will help in the validation. Public boolean called check user, pass the string string data type, email. Now I'm going to call the string array to columns equals to this. So it calls the column user ID. Close that right there. Now I'm still going to call on the SQLite database. DB object get writable database selection equals to the column. Now the user email, we concatenate that with a question mark. Still have the string array. Now the selection argument equals to the email. That's fine. So now we have the query function, which is used to fetch the records from user table. This function works like the way we use the SQL query. So the SQL query is equivalent to this query function we'll be creating, and we're actually going to select user ID from user where the user email equals to this. So query of that nature. Now let's quickly have the cursor to do that first. Cursor, have cursor object DB. Please query the DB, which is the table user. That's the user table. We come on. Now let's get to look at this. The columns. Selection arguments, null, I'm going to have cursor count equals to cursor get count. Now the cursor close. Also the DB should close. That's fine. Now we're going to test if the cursor count is greater than 0. Return true. Outside there, return false. That's fine. We have this set perfectly. Now we're still going to need to check for user if it passes in the email and password, but that one is just a replica of these. So for the check user, this is the second one, which has the parameter of email and password. This is create a kind of selection of the email and password field. That's just the difference. So from here, we'll be looking at the activities involved. The first will be the login activity, which will be the launcher, and we have to get this working as well. So let's implement view on click listener. Now we're going to pass in some fields. Private, final, compact, activity. So we have the fields declared for the input layout, the nested scroll view, the edit text, the app compact button, the app compact text view, input validation, that will be calling the validation, that's the helper package, and also the database helper, which is the SQL package. Now we have the onCreate method where we set the content view to the layout activity login. From here we get support, action bar, let's hide it. And we're going to pass in 3 methods here, which we'll be creating out of the onCreate. The first is the init views. Second is the init listener. While the third is the init objects. We'll be creating those methods after this. So let's have the init views method. That's fine. We're going to have private init views. Here we're going to initialize the fields. We'll first of all initialize the nested scroll view, the layout email, password, the text email, the button login, and also the register. So catch you shortly. So here we go. We've initialized the scroll view, layout email, password, button login, and also the link register. We call this appropriate ID. I just have to do that. So we move straight to the next method, which will be the init listener, private, void, init listeners. We call the app compact button login, and we set on click listener to this class. We also call the text view link register over there. We set on click listener to that. That's for the init listeners. Let's have the init object. Let me merge this. Now we're going to have the init object. It should be void. This time we call the database helper. Instantiate that, the new database helper. Now we pass in activity. This is parameter. Input validation. New input validation. We call the activity as well. This parameter. Now we're going to have the onClick method. From here, we have the onClick. We have to override this. Public. Void. So now we have the switch statement. I guess the object of get the ID. For the first case, if the ID is app comparts button login. You're going to call the verify from SQLite method. Get to create that as well. Break. Another case. This is going to be for the text view link register. Now he's going to call an intent. Intent register. So let me import this. Equals to new intent. Get application context. Points at register activity dot class. Now you need to start activity, passing the intent register. You break. That's fine. So we got to create the verify from SQLite method. That's also a private void. Verify from SQLite. So what are we going to verify here? We have the if statement for the input validation. Let's quickly bring that in. So we test for the validation, the input validation. Now we have the database that calls the check user. That's right from the database helper, and text get the text input at the text email, and also for the password. Now I'm going to actually call an intent here. So you have the intent account intent, which equals to new intent. The activity now uses, or it's actually going to be users activity, yeah. Users activity dot class. That's fine. Close them right there. Now I'm going to call the account intent to put extra. So this is where I actually shared extra data from the DB. So to put extra, now email, you can as well pass maybe name if the field has a phone number or something else. You can pick it up from here. So now text input at the text email, you get the text, you convert to string, and you trim. Now you empty the input at the text. Get to look at that method. Now let's start the activity and pass the accounts intent. So let's have the else. No, this is just, let's have the else statement. Now you call the snack bar to make nested scroll view. You're gonna pass a string here where we get, or it's not gonna be hard coded, so you get string our string, which is the error valid email password. That'll be what the snack bar will give us. Let's have the snack bar length long and show the snack bar. It's got to show. That's fine. So from here we're going to have the method, which is actually going to be the private void empty input edit text. Now we have the text input edit text email. How about we set text null, so also have the text password. How about we set text also null. We have the set, and we should be fine. So let's get to see where we have issues. Okay, over here, let's add this. That's fine. So from here, we'll look at the register activity. Well, we're going to actually get the form data registered. Now we extend app compact activity and implement view on clickness. No, yeah, we're going to have the first field private, final app compact activity. You have activity equals to register activity to this class. That's fine. Now we're going to have, for the nested scroll view, we're going to have other fields. I'm actually going to pause at this moment. Here we go. We need to bring in the fields that will be needed: the text input layout, the edit texts, the app compact button, the compact text view, even the input validation, which is from the helper, and also the database helper and the user. So we actually brought in all those fields. So right there, let me just try to collapse this to give us a few space. That's fine. And however, first method will be to override. Let's go override these. The onCreate method, which will be protected void and create. There's going to be bundle saved instance state called a super on create, save the instance state, set content view to layout no, actually going to be an XML, we'll call it layout activity register. So we need to import this. Now that's activity register. That's fine. Now we get action bar, we get right there. The same thing applies, just the way we did with the login. We're going to pass in init views. These are methods. Into the onCreate init listener. And init objects. Init views, init listeners, and init objects. So we get to create those methods. Private void init views. This is where we're going to initialize all the views that were created. So I'll be pausing here to bring them in. So we've initialized the fields with their appropriate IDs, which is actually from the activity register XML. So I'm going to move further. I think you know how to do that. We'll talk about the init listeners, just like the way we did for the login. Now we call the app compact register, set and click listener to that. This call the this. That's fine. So from here we create the objects. Let's collapse this. What's this? The right way. Let's have the objects. Private void init objects. I'll call the input validation. Instantiate with the new input validation pass activity. Those are the objects. Database helper, new database helper pass activity. Now call the user new user. That's fine. So afterwards we're going to have the onClick, just like the way we did earlier. Let's have the onClick method. Let's override public void onClick view. We have a switch. Now get the first case. App compact button register. So we're gonna call post method break. Next case login link. I'll be finish. Break. that's fine. That takes us down to the post data to SQLite. So I'm going to actually pass in some validation here, just like the way we did for the login. What about we have the input validation to check for if the text is filled and if the email is, probably it has been registered before, and some other validation matches, you can see. So just like the way we did for login, and we also check the user from the database helper, and we pass the values by setting the name, setting the email, and the password. So we call the add user. There is an add user from the database helper. This method. Let's get to look at this method, which actually adds user. Let's check user. And for add user over here, this add user triggers this user method to actually add to the database. So that's just what that does. And afterwards, we're going to have a private empty void empty input the text. That's the last method we're going to call. And right inside this method, call the text input and the text name. Set text to null. Same thing. Let's copy that. Paste that email. Set that to null as well. Password. Set that to null. And confirm password. Set that to null. So that's fine. We've actually done a lot when it comes to adding the user data into a database. We first of all check for validation before we we still trigger the check user to know if the user exists. If not, it's going to add to the database. Now we'll go to the manifest. Now manifest, we've actually specified the login activity as the launcher, but we need to register other activities that were used. Like now we used the activity which is for register, Android, screen orientation, portrait. We also gonna call on the users. We haven't passed in anything to the users. That will be the last to do then. Activity dot activities users. It's still empty, that's why it's not seeing it right there. But we're gonna work on it now. Android, screen orientation, portrait. So let's do something in the users activity. This will just get the extras that were passed, So there's extends, app compact. Let's create just a field, private text view. Let's call it text view name. Let's add name. Now the onCreate, protected, void on create. Sorry for that. Which calls the bundle. Saved instance state super on create. Save instance state. Set content view. Layout. Let's bring this in. Activity users. Let's initialize. Text view name equals text view. Find view by ID. ID. Text 1. I guess we didn't give the users, activity users. Oh, we actually didn't even do anything in the activity users. We need to pass in a text layout, you know, right in the activity users. Let me quickly do that. I'll just call this Android background color primary dark. I have the text view. Width and height of our content. Assign an ID. Text 1. Android. Layout margin top. 20 dp. Android. Margin left. 20 dp. Text size 20 sp. Android. Text style bold. Padding. And we give a text color. That's fine. So we have that set. Back to the users, so we can continue with what we're doing. Now we're going to call the string name from intent. If you notice, we only passed the email into the intent. Get intent. Now we're going to get string extra, and we pass email. Now we still call the text view name to set text. Let's just set something of this nature. Welcome. Concatenate with the name from intent. That's fine. So back to our manifest. Let's see. Yeah, we have it set, ready. So we can actually test out this application. It's a lengthy one, but you're actually going to learn a lot how to create an SQLite database, how to create the methods needed, how to call them, how to save data into the database, and even how to create a detail page after login. These are full bumper package for you to actually learn out. So I'll be testing it right there in an Android emulator. So I implore you to stay by, don't go anywhere. The email and password, but definitely I don't have an account, so I'll be forced to create one. So I'm going to click on the no account yet, create one. So once you click on this, you'll get to the register page. So let me register. Bamidele. My email, that should be scam. Password, and let me just put just a dummy. Bam. This password should be a password field. I'll fix that. It shouldn't be a text field. Bam. Now let's get registered. Can you see registration successful? So now go to the login to login. I'm on YK. Now password. Bam. Login. Can you see that? Welcome, bam, YK at yahoo.com. Just it. So a quick fix. Let me go straight down to, that'll be the register and even the login. For the password, the input field should be exclusively, it's still loading, so try to exercise a little patience. That's fine. Let's get to look at, there's the button. So over here, the input text for password should be password. So if I don't just expose the password that way, input type password. So it should be text password. Can you see there? Take away this. Let's make reference to this text password. That's for the input edit text. For register and even for confirm, there's a confirm password. This should change as well. Text password. And even for login also houses a password field. The text over here, as the edit, type text password. That's fine. So if you notice, let me pass in the email. Now the password. Can you see that it comes in the password format? So it gets to login. Oh, I have a wrong email. Alright, I have that set. Can you see that? So that's just how to go about this. Let's even try to create password fields changes, to a password format. So this is highly recommended. Thank you very much for hanging out with me throughout this tutorial, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a wonderful time. Bye bye.